Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Chris Cochran. He is a speaker, an author, and a CEO. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you, AJ. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you very much for the opportunity to sit here and talk with you.
You are welcome. You are welcome to the show, Chris. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are talking right now. We'll be talking about finding good in each day. In this backdrop, we'll have our discussion. And since this is a lot of things within this, uh, but before we come to this, let's understand a bit about your story so that a bit about your journey so that people know who they are listening to.
Fantastic, AJ. Thanks again. So, my story, like a lot of people, I grew up actually in rural Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania of the United States, a little town called Camp Hill. I ended up, wrestling. I was a wrestler and wrestled in college for the University of Tennessee. So I graduated from the University of Tennessee, and I actually had met my wife in high school. She's my high school sweetheart, and there's where my journey began. I began my career really in. I always tell my kids this because they're always wondering like where I came from or what we all have done. And my first job was I was going door to door selling Yellow Page ads, and that's informational book to walk door to door, and that's where I started my career. So it was quite an interesting way to jump into the world of sales. From there, I kind of grew and moved myself into technology. That was really where my brain was and where I wanted to be. At the end of the day, I'm an entrepreneur. I started my largest and longest career with a company called Maztech. I think it was called iGate at one point in time.
Right.
It's an Indian-based company. I spent a lot of time actually in India. I spent a lot of times in Noida, and
Right.
was over there quite frequently. So I was in the consulting IT business for quite some time. And ultimately, I decided around 2008 to start my own IT company here in the US, and began, driving that business through the consulting work, IT services, consulting to project work. And so that continues today. I am the CEO of Blue Chip Solutions. It's, again, like I said, an IT company. I also sit on the board of directors for Coeptis Therapeutics, which is a pharmaceutical. It's a biotech company here in the US. It is a public company where we do advanced cancer researches to, find areas where we can develop technologies to help those with very difficult cancers, those that are not been discovered yet. And I also sit on the board of the Christian Cochran Foundation, which is really at the heart of, I think, of who I am, less about all the business things, but really about, the journey that I've had in the last 3, 4 years of my life. And that really stems from the fact that, to your audience, I lost my son to cancer 3 years ago. And it was a very rare cancer, a cancer that's really seen mostly in, Southeast Asia, parts of India. It's called cholangiocarcinoma. It's a bioduct cancer. And so it's very rare for a young boy at 22 to receive this kind of cancer. And, once he got that diagnosis, that was back in August 26th of 2020. And this was a journey, like a lot of people, you start off, you get married, you start a family, things are going fantastic, business is great, and then you're hit really hard, and you're hit with this kind of diagnosis. Certainly, watching your son go through something, and he was given a terminal diagnosis, so he really had a less than 1% chance of living. And so we were able to get him into the best facilities over the course of a year, with all kinds of doctors all over the country and the world. And unfortunately, Christian passed away September 1st of 2021. But during that journey, what we learned was really how to overcome difficult moments, and how that practically can you, put that into place in anyone's daily life. And so, with the book that I have out, it's called What's Good About Today. And the reason for the title is during Christian's diagnosis, when he was first diagnosed, his mom and I said, "We're really sorry you have this. We wish we could take it away from you." And he immediately said, "No, I wouldn't wish this burden on anyone else. This is my burden to take." And never once during the time of his diagnosis to the moment he passed away did he ever complain one time. And so he was a remarkable human being, and he lived life to the full. And so he would tell us daily, and he would tell others daily, what's good about today. And it was a daily reminder to all of us that you can find beauty, you can find goodness in every single day, even the most difficult of times. And so I tried to write a what I would call a teaching memoir to express what we experienced, of course, but all the learned lessons from that by telling a story.
All the lessons learned by telling your story. So, Chris, I want to understand everything was going good for you until August 2020 came in, and then the whole thing changed for you till September 2021. I want to understand uh, what was that whole thing about? Was life trying to give you a message? Was life testing you? Was how did you see those uh, moments or months at that point in time? Or I want to understand your mindset. A lot of people who have got uh, that wherewithal or no wherewithal, and they get into difficult moments, especially if a health crisis comes in. Especially you have been to India, this part of the world, you know how any particular health crisis can devastate families, and so I want to understand your perspective on life, on perspective of on things, and looking and then how your story turned into Christian's story there on after. I want to understand a bit about how it all went into your mind, how you saw fit from, it's very difficult to see things from amidst everything. But since you are the one who is talking, you are the one who can only tell about us, I will have to ask you about that. How did you see life at that point in time?
It's a great question and very deep question. I think when you look at the way um, I always look at things as it's pre-cancer and after cancer. I sort of look back on those times, and I honestly I don't recognize that individual, AJ. It's one of those situations where you are correct. I've been to India many times, at least a dozen times, and I've traveled around. Actually, Christian went to India as well, and he had a rich perspective. He spent a lot of time he went to Bangladesh. He worked with those who were in need and struggling. He really had a real a real world view of the pain and suffering that goes on all over the world, and certainly I've seen it in India. Uh, my mindset, when this kind of happens, it's devastating, right? You're a father. As a dad, my whole perspective has always been about fixing things. And I think a lot of dads who are listening to you anywhere in the world, their whole perspective is how do I fix things, right? Moms nurture, they do a lot of different things better than I do, but it's how do I fix this? When you realize that you're powerless to something like this, I think that's the part that had a change in me, right? It took a while. This is only 3 years out. This is 3 years ago that I lost my son, and then, we went through that year, but the perspective is how precious time is. And one of the things that I focus on a lot in the book and I talk about is time. It's not the length of time we live, but it's the depth of the experiences we have. And I always like to highlight living fully, in the present. Cherish each encounter, every laugh, every tear as the essence of life. And you try to, you know, pay attention to the richness in small moments. And so I think, was it tough in that year because you're not looking at that, because I was on this merry-go-round of trying to save my son's life? But after it passed, about a year and a half ago, I really sat down. I do a lot of journaling. I like to write, and I spent every day during Christian's illness writing every day a journal, and that journal's just how I was feeling, how I was going through things, and I encourage that even in anyone's life. And there's so much suffering in the world. There is, I am humbled by the suffering that I see. We suffered for sure. Christians suffered, but there's a lot of immense suffering all over the world, and I feel that. And I think that the book and how we go about things is to try to show everyone that time is a limited currency that we all have, right? Time in its traditional sense is a limited currency, but the moments that we touch, the moments that touch our souls are infinite. So I think that's what I've learned and what I've gained since those times, and continue to learn and get better at.
Absolutely. Continue and get better at life. So you see, I am seeing life from you learned wrestling early on in life, and then you wrestled with all those tough moments at that point in time,
Mhm.
and then so I want to understand, how do you, amidst all these difficult moments, emotional moments, every other moment, seeing your son in pain, you're handling your own pain, your family's things that you want to fix, how do you uh, wrestle or not wrestle life and embrace life around that time and later on? What is your what was life trying to tell Christian? What did he think of life, and what did you think of life at that point in time? Because while you were looking amidst all these things, Christian was living the life that God had given him at that point in time, and at
Mhm.
that same time you had to wrestle with all the emotions, the feelings, and still try to fix things the way they were.
Yeah. Well, I tell you about Christian, he was an extraordinary human being. He was full of kindness and love. I tell this because I even talk about this a lot. Even as a little boy, this is a boy who was speaking complete sentences before 13 months. And so I knew from the get-go this was a unique kid. And I witnessed that the way his compassion and caring for others stood out from everyone else. I'll give you a great example. The first day of school, at least here in the US and maybe other places, but everyone rushes to get on the school bus, and everybody
Right.
wants to get the best seat there, right? So you're talking 20, 30 kids trying to get on a bus. Christian never wanted to be the first kid on the bus. He wanted to stay back and make sure everyone else got the best seat on the bus. Even those who were mentally challenged, he would wait to the very end to make sure they had the best place in the bus. So I witnessed early on this compassion for his fellow man and woman, that, he cared. He cared how others felt. He cared how he made them feel. And so, you know, I have wrestled, quite frankly, obviously since he's passed, is just trying to lead this purpose-driven life. Christian gave us a roadmap. It's, I look at the book is a book of a roadmap of life and how to lead that purposely driven life. But Christian laid it all out there for us. He understood that you take each day for what it is. And I think that that's the things that, you know, we continue to learn and develop and share it with as many people as we can, because you know how it is. I mean, everybody is moving in this fast-paced world. There's so much heartache, and again, grief is a universal thing for all of us. We see it
Right.
every day. When I was in India, I saw it every single day. I'd stay in India for months at a time. And it's not like I was in for a week and I was gone. I'd stay for months at a time. So I got to know families. I got to understand how people lived. And I look back on those times. I'm grateful for what I have every single day. But I realize the heartaches that everyone goes through and the griefs that they go through. But I think it's really important that we realize that we're all one under God, and that we are all going towards, doing good. I believe there's more good than there is bad, of course, in this world. So I think that it's important for everyone across the globe can use this message. I think if you use this message, ask the question every single day, what's good about today? It can it can make a mind shift very clearly in everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is where I want to ask about this book. What's good about today? When did you decide to write this book, Chris? Uh, was it after or amidst all those things, or you got the idea of getting this particular message across to the world?
About a year and a half ago, I started to feel this nudge. I think you can imagine we all feel nudges, and I think it was a little
Right.
bit of Christian pushing me. And now I will tell you about Christian. Christian was the most humbled person you ever met, and the fact that I talk about him probably embarrasses him because he was just one to say, "Dad, don't brag him." I love bragging on him because I always like to talk about him in the present sense because I do know he's here. I know he's guiding me. He guides a lot of people, and I've seen this message incredibly reach so many individuals. But the book is a cathartic process. It took it's been a year and a half labor. I You got to go back through notes. You got to go back through all those journals and relive things that I really didn't want to relive. I wanted to sort of kind of at the time just go away, disappear. And here I am. I'm running businesses. I got to keep my family together, which is the most important thing. And we are together, and we're a very close and loving family. Uh, but I think it's just putting those notes together, and I think you have to tell a story. I think a lot like life. Life is like Disney movies, right? Disney movies have this, beginning part and this kind of this difficult time that the characters go through, and then they rise to the top. They become better and achieve good things. So I think I use that as my mindset as I went into the book to explain, yes, this is a terrible thing. Yes, this is how our family felt. But I also go back to the beginnings of our life, how I met my wife, how that started, and how we came up with Christian, and how that started. But it's a journey. Many have asked me, "What's this book about? What is this about?" And I always say it's a love story. It's a love story about life. It's a love story about a family. It's a love story about how every family in the entire world can connect to this story and the pains and griefs that we all experience in our life, whether it's losing our parents, losing aunts, uncles, grandparents, and unfortunately, when we lose our children, which I think is the worst thing that one can go through. And there's a lot of parents who lose their children, and it's difficult every day. I say losing your child. I've lost my parents, and losing my child feels like a sticky glue. It's stuck to my body all the time. It never goes away. It's just there, and you can't shake loose of that. So I hope over time that the sharpening of that becomes a little duller, but we'll see how that goes.
I can understand. I can feel your pain, Chris, and I'm sure God will give you the solace that you want and all the inspiration that you want along with, because you are building a legacy of hope also. So I want to understand then, who is this book for, Chris? Who is this book for? What can people learn from that book? A love story that you say it is.
Well, the basis of the book, I always say teaching memoir. It's a teaching memoir. If I'm to categorize it, I think it fits a lot of different categories, and it fits it for families. Fits it for, I think, anyone who's 12 years old and above. Honestly, 13 years and above. I think it's a way for even young people to see the gratefulness of life. Now that's hard, kids and young kids, they got a different mindset, and their brains are still growing. What we have tried to do is with the what's good about today message is to try to, we're implementing this actually in school districts here in the United States. So we've been putting them in school districts where kids come in the morning. And we're talking about kids who are, we're talking 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, sometimes younger. And they come in, they write up on the whiteboard, what's good. There's a thing that says, what's good about today? And they write what's good about their day. And at the end of the day, they erase that and they come in the next day and they start over. Now, it's a great teaching tool because you can see which kids are having not good days and you can address those kids and help those kids. And so I think this book is for everybody, young and old. And I think it is a deep memoir, but it also is a purpose memoir that it gives practical tips that I think you can walk away with. And I think when you break it down and you look at life, how short life can be in days. And so I talk about that in the number of days that we have, that you have to make every moment count, because we're really only guaranteed these moments we have right now while I speak to you. So it's important that you put a lot into it. And so I think it's for everybody, AJ, really is.
Absolutely, absolutely. One question I wanted to ask to you, Chris, about that. Today we have become very goal oriented, and many a times we are so focused on the goal, in whatever name, that we forget the journey in between, that we forget the moments in between, we forget the days in between. How can one be focused on a goal because a goal is required, but as well as do not lose sight of the days and moments that we get every day, each moment? How do we do that in a time like today?
So that person you described, the goal-oriented person, was the guy pre-cancer. I thought about only how to grow a company, how to, I love my family. I'm a very close to the family, do a lot of things, but I was a guy so focused on, I don't know if many of your listeners have heard this quote, which Joneses, right? Or keeping up with your neighbor, essentially.
Right,
Right? You're
right,
always trying to either outdo them or outdo your competitor and be better and crush them and whatever that is. And I don't know that guy anymore. I don't think in those terms. I think we all need to shift our gaze, honestly, from a ticking clock to starting measuring lives in smiles and shares and the comfort we provide, the love we spread. Um, and instead of counting the years, we count moments of joy and kindness. And so I think it's in those times, it's tough. Does it need a terminal cancer to make us think about these things? Does it take the loss of our child to make us think about these things? It clearly did it for me, right? I was not thinking those ways. My life was perfect, right? I had money, I had perfect family, I was married to my high school sweetheart. I had I have three beautiful children. Christian's passed, I have two now. But I tell this because life can shift on a dime, literally shift on a dime. And we went from this, absolutely things moving in the most perfect, if perfect directions. And it shifted in an instant and changed everyone in our lives, my kids' lives, my wife's life, as losing our firstborn. So I think, to sum up the book, there's a lot in the book, and I hope people will get the book just for the actual reading of it and learning. But it's that life is precious. I talk about, Christian was a very spiritual person. We're Christians, but Christian believed, he took all faiths, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism. He took in his way as a way of life, Taoism. He believed in this flow. Don't go fighting against the river, right?
right.
Flow with the river. And I talk a lot about that. And I think that is important, that he embraced everyone. He embraced all faiths and he incorporated into his daily life. And he loved it. I mean, he loved learning about other cultures and their religions and the way that they do things. And I think if more people thought like that we were more embracive and inclusive like that, it would be a dramatic shift for anyone. But at the core of the day, it's looking at what's good about today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now you have not just seen life from close. Now now you are building hope for others. You have the legacy fund. You are into doing whatever you can for cancer research, and this is a lot of hope for a lot of uh, people. I want to understand how what is your message in terms of building hope for themselves, leaving a lasting legacy of hope, because hope is such a difficult commodity nowadays, with so many things happening around us which can make us despondent. Every day you wake up and it can be a difficult way of looking things. How do you then keep the hope alive amidst these time in these times?
Yeah. Well, this is going to sound really simplistic. I, as a human being, I have learned there's a couple things. One is, well, two things that are so important that I live daily. Is one is to always ask for God's forgiveness, to always tell God that I am not worthy of his love, right? It's the humbleness that one must have, I believe, truly. You must be humble before God. Number two is to let things go. What I mean by that is once you realize you're not in control, it is a cathartic change in one's life. You can really, because you're right, AJ, you hit the nail on the head, which is the world is filled. You just turn on television, which I don't regularly turn on the news or things like that because it's depressing, right?
Right.
It's all negative. It's all meant to I don't know what it's meant to do, but certainly doesn't make you feel good. But I focus on those I love, those who love me. I try to reach out to those, even though they may not like me for whatever reason. I don't know who that is, but um, I let things kind of go. And I think once you do that with your life, you just flush it out and say, "I'm not in control of things." Because see, that's the person that a lot of people are, right? Goal oriented, as you mentioned. It's about being in control. I can control this because I did. I thought I could control everything. I thought I could control my fate this way, control my fate, money, career, friends, my taking care of my protecting, putting an armored shield on and protecting my family. But the truth is, I can't. I am at really not in that control. So I think that's how I would express to your audience that once you let go of some of that control, it's a definitely a breath of fresh air and how you look at the world. It's much brighter, right? It's not as gray, it's not as dull colored. It does have brighter colors, and I try to look at the world in bright colors all the time. And I do that all the time. I look outside and I go, look at the bright colors. I examine things. I take notice of little things because the world is beautiful. It really is pretty spectacular when you look at everything.
Absolutely. The world is beautiful, especially with people
Mhm.
like Christian coming onto this earth, spreading love, spreading, happiness around, want to give others the best of what is possible, and not, certainly not the illness that he got that he wanted to keep for himself. And that speaks a lot of, goodness that is very much in this world. So to understand from you, when is this book coming out? Is it already out in the market, or is it a few more weeks to go by?
So the book actually hits the market August 22nd. It is available through pre-order right now on Amazon in every country. So it's a global distribution that the book has been put out there. It certainly is going into retail shops here in the U.S., but it is available globally. And I'm sure if you were to look up, what's good about today, a purpose-driven life, you will find details. You can also, I'm sure you could order it through Amazon. You can certainly order it in different places for sure. I will say this: the other thing that we didn't touch on is the Christian Cochran Legacy Fund, which is
Right.
a foundation. It's very important to point out that the foundation was set aside because of Christian. Christian told me before he passed away, he had some things. These are tough discussions you have with a 22-year-old. That's not the ones I wanted to have. Christian was destined for some pretty unbelievable things at the time. Once he graduated magna cum laude from college, he was scheduled to move to Los Angeles. He was going to be working in film. He was an actor. He had already been in movies. He was in a movie, a Batman, one of the major Batman movies. He was really destined for that kind of success, right? But he told me before his passing, he wanted me to set up a foundation to help those who were less fortunate, those who were in poverty, those who had children who did not have the benefits that he had. He wanted to take care of nature. He wanted to focus, me to focus on animals that are not taken care of. So the foundation was built, and we have been providing that to low income areas of the area we live in, which is Pittsburgh. We provide opportunities for kids for after school programs. We also do, different things around the community. So, and provide scholarships for kids who are less fortunate. So it's an important facet of our project that we're on. And so, again, the book, you can get it. You can also visit christiancochran.org, right? It talks about Christian. That's where the foundation is located. And you can learn a lot about Christian there. And I think the book is on there as well.
Right, right. And how can people contribute to this particular fund so that they can, be a part of this whole message of hope?
So I think the easiest way is, again, to go to christiancochran.org. I think you could Google Christian Cochran. You'll probably get a ton of stuff on Christian and his background, and everything about him will take you to christiancochran.org. On there, I think there is a fund page, which will direct you to the Christian Cochran Legacy Fund, which is through a very reputable, it's called the Pittsburgh Foundation. And it's extremely reputable. It's been around for, a very, very long time, decades. And they're known for the kindness and building foundations. So it wasn't something I wanted to do, is build a foundation from the ground start. I needed a very reputable foundation helper in that. And so that way people it's a 501c3, which means it's tax deductible, but it's also something where you can get a lot of information about the background of the foundation. So that's probably the best way to help and to look at things.
Wonderful. And one last question to you, Chris, is to understand your life has revolved around Christians' message, Christians' life, Christians passing away in such a big way that it becomes very difficult to actually focus on yourself, which can sometimes, I want to understand now, how do you look at your own life? What is it that you seek for yourself now from here?
Wow. No one's ever asked me that, AJ. That's gosh. I think I have to practice what I preach, right? I know I have to practice what I preach. So, I think I wake up every day. I have a routine. I'm a routine kind of guy. I wake up, I wake up, relatively early, and I pray. I spend about 20 to 30 minutes of prayer, asking God to bless myself. I ask him to bless my family. I ask him to give me the strength and the wisdom to be a good person, to be a good father, to be a good husband, to be a good friend. Those are the most important things to me. And then I bless for the world, to find kindness and to be with those people who are alone. Those who I think about this all the time. It wears me down probably the most. And I'm going to get to your questions. How do I take care of myself? But I'm where I get worn down a little bit, because since the passing of Christian, I take on other people's burdens, in a sense, right? I give it up to God, but I hear a lot of stories, right? And people come to me for this information, and it's a lot. It's very heavy information. And people who are in much worse circumstances than myself. And so I think about those people. I pray for those individuals. I pray for people in India. I pray for people in all places of the world to find peace, so that they have the comfort of God in the worst of moments. For me, it's meditation. There's my wife is a yoga instructor, so I feel blessed that I live with a yoga instructor who gives me a lot of. She's a certified yoga instructor, so she is so peaceful, so sweet, and so kind, and she is does so much to keep me in check. And so she's a really good way of it helps me meditate. So I do meditate and I do yoga. So those are the things I try to do for myself and become more in tune with my body and life around me.
Life around you. On this note, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.